Good to see you, friends. Very grateful for everyone who is present. And I do want to commend you for an excellent weekend. We had a lot of efforts put forth in a very noble cause, and I think it generated a lot of good and inspired a lot of young people to remain committed and become committed to the Lord. And I just thank you. I know it wasn't easy. I know a lot of sacrifices were made, but there is a servant spirit here, and it was just on display this weekend. And I commend you for that and for your love for the truth and for your love for young people. In fact, Stephanie and I just received a text a while ago from the grandmother of one of the boys who was staying with us. His name was Jackson. But she said, please pass along to the elders and deacons and everyone that the efforts that went into putting this weekend together for the teens is very much appreciated by the families of the teens. The boys sure did enjoy it. I heard words from great to awesome. That's when they were talking about me. But then she said they said the speakers were fabulous. I asked Jackson if it was just fun or inspiring to make you a better Christian. He said inspiring and how good it was to be with other Christians who were like-minded. Thanks so much for taking good care of him. Love to you too. That's me and Steph. But still, I pass that along because I know there are a lot of grandparents and parents who feel the same thing about you. And I just commend everybody who had a hand in this and was supportive of it. And the whole process, a very beautiful thing. I look forward to whatever may come from that in the future. I do want to say that tonight is the last night that Brother Jackson Cowley will be with us. He is moving to Florida tomorrow, and so I hope you have a moment to bid him farewell tonight. He's like a son to us. He's definitely part of the family, and we've been so blessed to have him with us, and we're going to miss him. In fact, Micah, our son, is traveling with the Chandlers right now to Florida, so let's pray for them. Let's pray for a lot of people who are traveling to camps and other places this week. And I know that there are other college kids leaving soon, so let's be thinking of them. So, how capable are you of blocking out distractions? Are you able to focus on one thing and that thing alone and not let anything else distract you? And I came across a test that focuses, if you will, on that task. And it's a little video clip. There's no sound to it, but I found a way to add it to this presentation. And I'm about to play it. It's just a few seconds long. But you'll see in this video that you're asked to count how many times the people wearing white pass the ball. And I'll tell you this right hand up front, it's going to be hard. You need to focus because there are a lot of things that could distract you from this. But that's the challenge. Can you count how many times they pass the ball? Now, if you're listening to this on the audio version, then know that we're about to have a few moments of silence as we watch this video. But here it is. So here's the first screen of it. And it started automatically on my computer. I wonder why it's not starting. Can you scroll over that, Clint or Matt, and hit play? Okay, no, that's not it. Let's go back. There you go, man. There you go. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What? That's the whole sermon. The whole sermon's based on this. We got to get this video out. What? I downloaded it. It's good. No, it's not good, is it? Oh, come on. How could this be? How can it be? All right. That's part of it. That's all part of it right there, what I just did. That's all part of it. Well, phooey. Let's see. Just 1 second here, because you really need to see this if it's possible. If you're listening, I'm about to have a heart attack, so. Okay. Did y'all have a good weekend? Anything interesting happened to y'all? What else happened? Okay. Well, this is good. Okay. I'll give you just a few seconds more. All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys. That's all right if it's not going to work out. Okay. Let me just move on then, because this is getting really awkward up here. More than usual, that is. I'll just say that. Not happening? All right, brother. Appreciate it anyway. Thanks anyway. Well, the question is, can we focus? Okay? And do we get distracted very easily by things around us? And I ask that because I think it's possible for us to do this. It's possible for us to forget what really matters most in life. That we can forget that we are here on a mission and that we have limited time, and that we can get away from even things, now this won't work. Now, even things like our family and things like that. Oh, my goodness. It's not even working now. Can you? There we go. Thank you. But we can lose sight of what matters most, like our family and our spiritual growth and even the value of life. I came across this quote that I thought was pretty good, or at least an observation. In our search for gold, have we lost the diamonds? And really what the person is saying is that in our pursuit of material things, because that's certainly the world we live in, have we lost sight of what really is beautiful about life, the beauty of life itself, the beauty of nature, and all of its blessings? God tells us in Colossians chapter 3 and verses 1 and 2, if then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. Are you distracted? Are you focused on what matters most? Are you setting your mind on things above? Now, what I was hoping to show in that video is that it's possible for us to focus. It's possible for us to cancel out distractions if we really want to see something. And that's what you were going to see from that. But can we do it? And more importantly, are we doing it? Now, I want to just make 2 points tonight in this lesson. And that is on setting our mind on things above. And the first one is that we can lose sight of God. And that's exactly what is described in Romans chapter 1 when God is describing why he's going to judge mankind. And he says in Romans chapter 1 that people are without excuse because he's right there. He has made it possible for people to see him in themselves. That we are the only creatures on this planet who can think. We're the only creatures on this planet that have morality, that hope, that dream, that pursue, that forgive, that are concerned about right and wrong. We're the only creatures under the sun that do that. And what God is saying in this text is that's proof. That's proof that he put a piece of himself within us. And because we can see that, especially in a world that screams design and precision and creation, he says people are without excuse. Who don't know me, who don't walk with me, who don't live with me, there is no excuse for that. And he's going to hold people accountable for that. And that's what he says in Romans chapter 1, beginning in verse 18, where he says, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth. And when you suppress something, you hold it down. It's capable of popping up, but you hold it down. You suppress the truth. You try to keep it hidden in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them. Okay, again, just take a step back. Why are you different than your dog? Why are you different than your cat? Are those creatures concerned right now about their soul? Do they even have a soul? Do they care about what justice or injustice is happening in this world? You are the only creature on the planet who thinks like this, who thinks about life under the sun. They only operate by instinct, but you have intelligence, okay? Where did that come from? What God is saying in Romans chapter 1 is what may be known of God is evident in them. It's manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. There is no way you can have a rational mind in this world and cancel out a creator. It's impossible because of all that's here in the world, especially in yourself. And so he says in verse 20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, so on and so forth. And so he says that people have become corrupted in their thinking. Now what this means is, especially in this context, is that God is saying, okay, you can know I'm going to hold you accountable for this because you're without excuse. But he goes on to describe in detail what happens when people try to block out God. When you have a world of people who dismiss God and suppress the truth and try to keep it hidden, here's what happens. And so in Romans chapter 1, the Spirit is going into great detail about the decay that happens morally to a society or to a people who forget God, who depart from God. And he specifies things for us to think about and to see. Now, he says this in verse 28. This is Romans chapter 1, beginning in verse 28, and he's going to go down a list, and I want to mention every one of them. He says in verse 28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind, to do those things which are not fitting. Now, let me say this, because this is so important. If you weren't here this morning, or if you're listening on the audio recording of this lesson, you must get a copy of Brother Todd Chandler's lesson this morning. You have to hear it, because it is just so profound. The observation he's making about describing our world in great detail about modernism and the carnal thinking that's found in our society, especially today. You have to hear that lesson. You must listen to it. But it goes along so well with what is being observed in this context. Because he says in Romans chapter 1, here's what happens when people try to push God out of their thoughts and out of their lives. Here's what happens. That they are given to a debased mind and are doing things which are not fitting. Number one, being filled with all unrighteousness. Now, unrighteousness is referring to something that is unfair. It's a person who's focused on himself, and he disregards the rights of others, unrighteousness. He says, number 2, they're given to sexual immorality. It comes from the Greek word porneia. We've heard that a lot, I'm sure, over the years. But here's what sexual immorality is, and it's exact, it's precise. Sexual morality is referring to sexual acts that take place outside of marriage when God endorses that marriage or approves that marriage. It's the sexual acts that take place outside of a marriage that God approves. That's sexual morality. He says you have unrighteousness, sexual morality, you have wickedness. Wickedness refers to the desire to harm another person, to deliberately corrupt them, or to inflict injury upon them. Wickedness. He says there is covetousness. Covetousness is a lust for gain, or to gain a possession regardless of harm to others. Covetousness. He says that you have maliciousness, which refers to hatred, or this self-centered rage that can be so evident. Do you ever see that? Driving especially. Do you have anybody who's given to malice when you're driving as they're 2 inches off your bumper? Do you feel that? Do you feel the hatred that's there in something like that? Do we live in a world like that? Full of envy, he says. And envy is the displeasure at the prosperity or advantage of another person. Full of envy. He says that they are given to murder. Now, to murder is to unlawfully take the life of another person. And what we see from the teachings of Christ is it's not just a physical act, that it can happen mentally as well. In fact, I'll mention to you that in 1 John chapter 3, in verse 15, this is what the Bible says, that in describing this, it says, whoever hates his brother is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. Well, that's what he's saying in Romans 1. A murderer. This is what happens to a society that departs from God. They're given to murder, taking innocent life. They're given to strife, he says, back in verse 29. Strife is quarreling or contention, typically resulting for a desire for prestige. Strife. He says in that verse as well that they are given to deceit. Some translations say guile. This is a person who's crafty, who's devious, who always has an ulterior motive behind what he does. Deceitful. Evil-mindedness, and that refers to somebody who's ill-natured, somebody who is finding the worst in others. Evil-mindedness. He says they are whisperers. A whisperer is a gossip, a talebearer. Now, here's something I heard years ago, and I've seen it true. I've never seen it disproved, and I think it's right. That if somebody will gossip with you, you can know they will gossip about you. And that's just the rule. I've never seen that not proven true. Now, I know there's a balance. I struggle with the balance of speaking of someone's evil to learn from it versus speaking evil of someone. And it all gets down to intent. Are we trying to poison people's minds against someone else? That's what gossip is. And you can never engage in it without expecting to receive the same thing in return. And so he says that they are given to whispering or given to that type of behavior. He mentions backbiters. A backbiter is a slanderer. Now, how they're different is that he is or she is a person who maligns another person's character openly. Where a whisperer does it in a hidden fashion, the slanderer does it openly. The backbiting. He says that they are given to hating God. Now, why would anyone hate God? Well, you can see that this refers to somebody who resents the concept of God because of the restrictions it places on their behavior. That's why people don't want to believe in God or think about God, because of what's expected in accepting an eternal God. Haters of God. He says that they are violent, and this is, of course, referring to someone who is cruel and insulting, who has delight in hurting other people. That's possible. He says they are proud. And this is, of course, speaking of a person who puts himself above other people, who's constantly seeking his own praise from other people and from himself. And yet Jesus says when you give, don't even let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, or something like that. Don't even think about it yourself in wanting your own praise. Well, a proud person's going to be like that. You have boasters. A boaster, and I thought this was interesting, refers to like a salesman who is saying boastful things, but false things about his wares. He's a braggart. He goes on to say in verse 30, Romans chapter 1, they are the inventors of evil things. Now listen to this. This is a person whose old sins are no longer thrilling. And so they're seeking new ways to enjoy sin. Well, you see that every time something happens with technology. I mean, it doesn't take long before that device or that ability is manipulated to promote immorality. I mean, it doesn't take long. It always goes hand in hand, it seems like. And yet he says there are people who invent, who think, conspire ways to create evil things. And everything that's evil was first in the mind. And so you have inventors of evil things. He says in verse 30 that they are disobedient to parents. This is referring to somebody who's a constant rebel against the parent's authority, who is stubborn and defiant. Well, does that happen today? Is that happening today? In verse 31, they are undiscerning. And this refers to somebody who is literally unintelligent. But this unintelligence is a result of choice, who chooses to be foolish, who refuses to see the right way or the truth, undiscerning, doesn't want to make a judgment because of the implications of that. Untrustworthy is referring to somebody who cannot be relied upon or trusted. Unloving refers to somebody who does not have that natural love, either between parent and child or between other people. No love. Unforgiving is referring to somebody who is not willing to make peace or come to an understanding. He says unmerciful is referring to somebody who has no pity or compassion on people, who is cruel to other people. In verse 32, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things. Now we've all done these things. We all have. And we'll all struggle with these things going forward. But we don't remain in them. We don't practice these things. Whoever, God is bringing judgment against those who practice such things. They're deserving of death. Not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. So we may not be doing these specific things, but if we approve or give consent to those who do, then God says we're right in the same boat with those who are doing it. And that's a very big threat to our faith. I think of what it says in Psalm 50, because this is really revealing. But it says in Psalm 50, where God is exercising judgment against a group of people, and he says in Psalm 50, in verse 17 beginning, seeing you hate instruction and cast my words behind you. When you saw a thief, you consented with him, and have been a partaker with adulterers. That is, you didn't speak out against it. You give your mouth to evil, and your tongue frames deceit. You sit and speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. These things you have done, and I kept silent. You thought that I was altogether like you, but I will rebuke you and set them in order before your eyes. Now consider this, you who forget God, lest I tear you in pieces and there be none to deliver. Whoever offers praise glorifies me. And to him who orders his conduct aright, I will show the salvation of God. And that certainly, I think, is a great contrast to the person who is consenting to evil. All right, so there's the first part of the lesson. And that is that we can lose sight of God. When we set our mind on things above, we can lose sight of God. But here's the second part, and the final part of this lesson. And the good thing is, we have the ability to focus. We really do. You and I have the ability to cast out distractions and center in on something if we really want it. And we can especially use that power in going to heaven. Here's what I'll share with you in regard to this. One of the things your Creator gave you, really that He entrusted you with, is the ability to choose. That's why you're different than all the other creatures in this world. He trusts you because He made you in His image. And one of the things He trusts you with is the ability to choose. Romans chapter 8, here's what he says in verses 5 and 6. Talking about how we decide, how we decide to use this power. He says in verse 5 that those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Well, you have that. You are in the driver's seat. You have the ability to make choices and to decide how you're going to use your mind. God's given that to you. It's all up to you. And He says now you can either use it on the flesh or you can use it on what the Spirit has revealed. But it's up to you. If you have the ability to judge, then it's up to you while you still have that ability. Now, what we have to keep in mind is this very, very important thought right here, because this is so true. When it comes to choice, keep this in mind. You have something more powerful between your ears that is more powerful than a laser beam. You have that. And that is your will. It's your intelligence. It's your mind. It's your heart. It's your soul. It's your spirit. It's your heart. And God has entrusted you with this magnificent ability, hoping that you will use it to choose Him and focus on Him, to set your mind on things above. But here's reality. Reality is this right here. Reality is whatever you think about and whatever you want more than anything else is going to manifest in your life. It will, in one way or another, good or evil, it will be manifested in your life. Or another way of saying that is your life is a result of your thoughts and what you want more than anything else. Now, there's a couple of ways we can see this in Proverbs chapter 4. And before I read these verses, I'm reminded of this because this is true. Okay, I've seen one before, and it was at Matt Wilson's house, in fact. But there's these things, I'm not familiar with them. I have no firsthand experience with them, but these 3D printers. And from what I understand, and if you're like me, you don't have any experience with it, basically, a 3D printer is that you put an image in on the computer, you send it to the printer, and it literally is cut out in some form, some solid form. Sometimes it's like wax or what you and I would consider like plastic. I've seen people produce stuff before. When I was up in Kokomo, there was an engineer at church who worked at Chrysler. He was all into that stuff. And he had made something for one of the members who needed some help with something, and it was just, he went in and he designed it all, and it came out like a little plastic form to hold, really it was holding like an Alexa, that type of device to lock it in place for them at home. But, okay, so you put in the image, and that printer basically cuts it out for you. Basically, that's the extent of it. That's all I know about it. Well, that's what your mind is. You put something in your mind and you think about it and you want it more than anything, your life is going to reveal that. It's going to happen in your life. In Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 23, notice where it says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Your life, it all reflects around that, your heart. Or as it says in Proverbs 23 and verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And that's true. So we can use this powerful device God has given us to focus on Him and to do good. And in fact, we can use it in a noble sense, especially spiritually. It did feel good to have over 400 people here this morning. It was real energetic. It was just real encouraging to see. I'm encouraged by the number we have tonight as well. I'm not dismissing that. But don't you know that if we wanted that many people here as a church on a regular basis, do you not know we have the ability to do that? That is as real as your ability to breathe. That's real. Here's why it's real. We talked about it last Sunday night, about the church at Philadelphia. What did God do for them? Because they were trustworthy. That they were trustworthy in the small, when their strength was small, they were honorable, and God could trust them when the numbers were low. He was going to do what? Open a door. Open a door, and nobody could shut it because He saw they could be trusted with more. And when you and I prove that we will love, we will reach. When the numbers are small, then we can be entrusted with more. You ask and you receive. That's the rule that we live by, especially with our merciful Creator. But think of this. If you and I want that, and we think about that more than anything, that is real. It is cut out on that printer. It's as real as anything else when we want it. But I especially apply it to what we're looking at tonight. If you want to go to heaven, you can go. If you focus on it more than anything else, you can see heaven one day, especially because of the mercy extended to us through Christ. Let me say this in Philippians chapter 4, because this is really neat. In Philippians chapter 4, you have the ability to center your mind on God. Now, I know we still have responsibilities in life. It's not canceling that out, but they temper. When your mind is focused on God, all these other things are tempered by that. They're influenced by that. And here's what he says. Okay, you're in the driver's seat, or you have the ability to type in any program or any image you want to come out on the printer. You have that ability. Here's what he says. You get in your head, and here's what you think about. Philippians 4 and verse 8. He says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. Why, God? Why meditate on them? Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. You reap what you sow. If you plant God in your heart, and you love Him more than anything else with all of your heart, it's going to manifest itself. It's going to be real, both in eternity, but especially in this life. And I'm about to prove it. When you go back to what we looked at, now the purpose of this image is, it's not a selfie, but it's to show that the godly thoughts, the wholesome thoughts are more powerful. They're more powerful than the ungodly thoughts. And this is true. You look at what he said in Philippians 4 and verse 8. Whatever things are true. Now what that means is things are accurate. Okay? When you're dealing with the truth. You're not afraid of the truth. The truth sets you free. Will you think on things that are true, that are real, that are accurate? Okay? Well, look at this. You go back to this list of the depravity that comes from people not thinking about God. The decay that happens to any group of people that won't think about God, who suppress the truth. Well, you look at this. If you and I apply what Paul is saying in Philippians 4 and verse 8, and we meditate on things that are true, look what happens. It's going to cancel out certain things from a society that departs from God. I would think if you look at this list, and it's not exact, but in my opinion, this is what it would do. You'd get rid of deceit, right? A society that is departing from God is deceitful, Romans 1. Well, if you're thinking on true things, it's going to get rid of that. It'll get rid of undiscerning, that is, you don't want to judge between good and evil. Let it get rid of that if you deal with truth. If you meditate on true things, I think it'll get rid of this untrustworthiness, if you will, because you accept the truth. And then he says, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble. Noble refers to things that are honorable, respectable, honorable things. All right, we'll go back to our list. If you think on honorable things, guess what it's going to do? It's going to cancel out things like wickedness and things like maliciousness. Because that's not an honorable thing to do, to be so filled with hate. Or get rid of things like being disobedient to your parents. Where's the honor in that? Well, if you meditate on honorable things, it cancels that out. Going back, it says in Philippians chapter 4, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just. And that refers to something that's fair. You think about being fair to people. Okay, I go back to this list of things to avoid. And if I'm being fair in my thinking, it's going to get rid of murder. I don't want to hurt anybody. That's not the right thing to do. It's going to get rid of being a whisperer. I don't want to be treated like that. That's not fair. And so I won't do it to other people. It's going to get rid of backbiting. It's going to get rid of things along that line. Whatever things are just, whatever things are pure. Pure is that which is clean and upright. Okay, going back to this list. If I'm being pure and clean in my thoughts, I'm going to avoid sexual morality. I'm going to avoid evil-mindedness, thinking the worst in people. I'm going to avoid undiscerning between good and evil, the foolish heart. I'm going to avoid the acceptance of evil if I am pure in heart. When I think on things that are lovely, that is, things that are pleasant, it's going to get rid of things like envy. I want you to do well. I want you to prosper. I'm not going to be envious of that because that's a loving thing to do. It's going to get rid of violence and get rid of an unloving disposition. It's going to get rid of an unforgiving disposition and an unmerciful disposition. When I think on lovely things, when I meditate on things of good report, that is, things that are pleasant. Now, I realize it's not exact science here. You can probably cancel them out in your own way, but here's the way I see it. But God says, okay, people, you think about things that are of good report. That is, things that are respectable to think about and talk about. Think about these things. All right? Well, if I'm like that, then I'm going to get rid of unrighteousness. I'm not going to think on those things. I'm not going to think of strife and that type of mindset or being a hater of God. That's not a very good report to dwell on. He says that if there is anything or any virtue, meditate on these things. Virtue refers to moral excellence and the courage to live with that standard. Going back to this list, then that will get rid of covetousness and it will get rid of inventing evil things because of the immorality tied in with those. And then, of course, it leaves us with something that is praiseworthy. That is something that's honorable, something that is commendable, and then that, of course, will cancel out pride and boasting because there is no honor in elevating yourself before other people. You see? All of that gets back to what? Focusing and highlighting things of God, meditating on these things. And when you give these things center stage, guess what it does? It blocks out all the evil and wickedness that is so rampant in our world that can easily persuade our thinking. And so I share these thoughts with you. You listen very patiently, and I appreciate you for this. But where is our mind What is our mind centered on? And do we have it set on going to heaven first and foremost in life? May 30th. May 30th. We had friends from Indiana visit us. And you all know about this, and I appreciate the outpouring. Stephanie and I do. Our family does appreciate the outpouring of love and support in the passing of this precious, precious Christian woman. She was sitting right there, May 30th. And then 6 weeks later, this 56-year-old Christian woman who was a godly woman through and through, who had no guile whatsoever within her, had no underlying conditions in her physical health. 6 weeks later, she's dead. And they're awaiting their second grandchild, the birth of their second grandchild. Godly woman, I cannot explain that. Why a godly woman would be removed from her family, because her family would not be where they are today in Christ were it not for her influence. Wonderful woman. But she has left this life. And it reminds me of the importance of life. Appreciate your family. You're not guaranteed anything. Appreciate time with your family. But more importantly, prepare to meet God. What does it matter? If you gain the whole world and you lose your soul, what have you gained? What does it profit is what Jesus... And it doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. The only thing that matters is being right with God. And we're going to sing this song, if you're not right with God, to encourage you to obey this glorious gospel. If you're ready to be baptized into Christ, we can help you do that tonight. If you need to make things right with God in a public way, please respond as we stand and sing.